What happened with Darren Waller, and what is still happening with Darren Waller here, Ian?
Yeah, so, every year there's like 2 or 3 hamstring injuries to star players that just don't get better. And I would say Keenan Allen's probably in the same boat. I don't get the sense they're going to do this to Keenan Allen, but it's a hamstring that just hasn't gotten better. And each time you practice a little bit, instead of being just kind of a hurdle you overcome, it just gets worse. And I think for Waller, every time he tried to practice, it got worse. They put him on IR. He is now out 4 games, and hopefully by the time he returns, his hamstring will be better. It also leads you to wonder why this wasn't done earlier. But hamstrings are kind of different, and so much of it is like a feel injury that maybe that was the feel they got early on, was that, we can manage this. I think the frustrating thing, though, is like this is supposed to be a great celebration of a season for the Raiders. New coach, new GM, new star players. I know they rebuffed trade offers for Waller at the deadline, and nothing has gone according to plan for the Raiders.
There were a lot of depressed people in the studio when news broke on Darren Waller landing on IR. I think we're 3 for 4 of having him on a fantasy team.
4 for 4.
And you're 4 for 4. All 4 people in this studio have Darren Waller on a fantasy team, including myself here. The guys also had a question for me about whether or not Josh McDaniels is on the hot seat. My answer, in short, Ian, was there's no reason to believe that right now. This has obviously been a disappointing start to the season. There was also always an inevitable type of growth process that was going to have to take place when you're changing things culturally and schematically with a veteran team of big personalities that won and were in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
Do you agree with my assessment, and where do the Raiders really go from here?
I do not believe he is in trouble. I was also told by very, very high-ranking sources in Indy that Frank Reich was not in trouble 2 weeks ago. And I'm pretty sure he got fired on Monday. So it's the NFL. It moves way faster than it ever has moved. So I understand that, but I don't believe he's in trouble either. And it's really, really interesting for the Raiders because they are not good. And I think everyone expected them to be good. And they just put one of their best players on IR. They cut a former first-round draft pick in Jonathan Abram. And they face a Colts team this week that is pretty horrific and also has Jeff Saturday as their head coach. If the Raiders continue to be bad, like really, really bad, that would be terrible. However, it would also put them in position to have a really, really high draft pick and allow this, general manager and coach to start to build their own foundation after taking over from the scraps of Mayock and whatever, wasteland of first-round picks that he left them. It's really like a fascinating spot for the organization. And I don't know that they would embrace, a high draft pick, but it would not hurt in the long run if they're able to take someone in the top 5 or the top 10 for a team that probably did not expect to be able to do that.
We can't get enough of the Jeff Saturday press conferences here, Ian. The new saying, every day is Saturday, I think is it's very popular right now. What are your early impressions of everything you've seen and heard since Jeff Saturday was plucked from his TV analyst job and handed the reins of a Colts team that's trying to figure this thing out?
I have no idea if Saturday is going to be good or not. But if he was bad at press conferences, that would say a lot of bad things about his TV job. He literally talks for a living. If his
not anymore.
Well, it's basically what he does now anyway. But if his press conferences sucked, you'd be like, well, what was he doing over there at whatever show he was on, right? So he should be good. It makes sense that he's good. And I don't know that it matters at all because, giving speeches in the locker room is about 0.01% of what you do as a head coach. I think he sounds good. It's, still in a position where he should probably not be there, given all the other talented people who are actually coaches. But I would say his press conferences sound good.
Like you mentioned Mike Mayock in there and the drafting record, which, as we both know, it's hard to really pinpoint who was making the picks because John Gruden had such a huge influence over the organization, everything they did personnel-wise. But Mayock's another good example. Mike is a great guy. We both know him really well from working with him at NFL Network and a good evaluator of talent. but there's so many other things that go with that job just on the front office side. On the evaluation side, it's about running your meetings. It's about having a plan for where your area scouts are going to be. It's how you go through the pre-draft process. Plucking him just set him in such a... Basically, he wanted to be a college scout. He could still evaluate players, but all those other things weren't really what he was about. And coaching, in my opinion, is so much harder because of all the other aspects of that job and the way that you have to manage the players. I mean, is the GM, unless you're cutting the player or signing him, you're probably not super involved. Now, if something goes wrong, whatever. But on the coaching side, you're involved every single day. It's wild to me when you have somebody hired directly off TV. And granted, I would say Jeff Saturday and Mike Mayock both more qualified than me or you to take that job. But it's a lot easier to sit here and talk about things that went wrong and what you would do differently, or getting a call from your boss or your future boss saying, hey, how would you fix this? I don't know. Tell them to block better. All right, you're hired. That's basically what happened here with Jim Irsay hiring Jeff Saturday. Yeah. I don't know how you translate one to the other, especially when the locker room, quite frankly, no offense to Jeff Saturday, but I don't know that 90% of the guys in that locker room know who he is.
Yeah, I mean, well, he's been around the organization plenty with, Ring of Honor stuff, so I would assume they have some idea. But, yeah, so I will never forget, like, a week – I was so excited for Mike Mayock to get the Raiders GM job, right? I mean, I love Mayock. Like, he's great. He was a great teammate at NFL Network. And I was so excited. And I will never forget early on getting a call from one of the scouts there who was like, hey, Mayock doesn't really know what he's doing. Like, what? I'm like, yeah, like all the stuff that, like, the meetings and, like, the planning and, like, I think it's going to be fine. He really doesn't know. And I guess eventually he figured it out because he did the job for a couple of years, but, like, it's very different. And, Jeff Saturday saying that, well, I've seen successful GMs and I've watched coaches like, okay, cool. You also had Peyton Manning, but whatever. Like, watch people be good. That is not the same as actually doing it. We'll see what happens. Maybe he gets to prove everyone, including me, wrong. But I'll stop talking.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.